you do it last year?
Maybe you did. Did you go to Red last year? Maybe.
No? All right. Well, you'll. Music could be louder.
I hear her, but I don't see.
I know, it's just.
Where the hell is this? This is
You guys just had a really long walk. Be proud of yourselves. This is awesome. No, I think it must be in Sandy's car or Brigitte's apartment. Huh? I've seen him around. I kind of want to lead you all into Jazz Square. This music's good for jazz squares. Hey, Sarah. Come on down. There's lots of room. Got to keep the energy high. Yeah, dancing happening. Shake off your coats. Shake out your hats. Huh? Oh, yeah. Well, keep your pussy hats on. Thanks, Jeanette. This is a celebration. Come on down. Do you want me to turn the music up? Is that what's the problem? More? Okay, can we turn the sound up? I don't have the controls.
I work with Kitchener Waterloo Region. Do you mind if I ask you for your name?
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
Kirsty Smallman. K-I-R-S-T-I-E.
S-T-I-E?
Yeah,
Small man.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. Come on in, everybody. There's space. Get close. Hi. Hi. Do y'all know where the green room is? Hi, how's it going, Lori? Well, no, you can if you want. Okay. No, or you can put stuff back there. It's up to you. There's water and snacks. It's just around the corner. I feel like being a cheerleader, no one's really responding. I'm like, ah. Come on, bust a move with me. Oh, hey, hi. You look so tall now.
They like your hair, so this
Aw.
is from
Yes,
Tyra.
your hair is
This
amazing. Thanks.
And this is Gwen.
It's my extra winter hat because it's cold out, right?
Where would the green room be?
I'll be right back. This way. Doo-doo, doo. You're welcome. So apart from it being cold on the march, how was your march experience? Yay! You're thawing out. I'm getting more reactions from you. Yay! Come on down. How many of you hunched your shoulders against the cold? Just like shake it out. Let the shoulders go. I'm trying to be a cheerleader. Come on. Be responsive. Okay. Show me what a feminist looks like. Come on. It looks like all of you. Yeah. All right. Should we start some? Oh. I'm just killing time until they're ready to dance. We do some line dancing, little grapevine. Just let me know when you're ready. Lori just went to the green room. Yeah. Recommendations? No, it's just a pre-recorded thing. I'm sorry. I can't. I'll draw a square again. Or we can walk in a square. I'll come down here. Not that you want to walk anymore, I guess. Maybe not walking. We're going to boogie. Oh, and take selfies. Hashtag. What's the hashtag? Make sure you use the appropriate hashtags. Hashtag women's wave. That's a good one. Use your Kitchener Public Free Wi-Fi. Do you want the stand? Or you like?
No, I'm good. Okay.
Welcome, everyone! Okay, how many of you marched? Give me a yeah! How many of you are joining us in this warm environment? Well, thank you for coming out. We are going to begin. One of the reasons why we're here today is to talk about murdered and missing Indigenous women. And it is very appropriate when we talk about the fact that one of the reasons why it's so important for us to march, and for us to march for those who can't, is that 1 in 3 women in the world will experience violence against themselves. And that's not okay, is it? We have an amazing woman here. Lori Campbell joined Waterloo Region, was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago, but I feel like she's been here a lifetime. I'm just gonna do a quick little bio on her. Lori is a Two-Spirit, Métis, and Scottish woman. Her relatives are from Treaty 6 territory in northern Saskatchewan, which is where I'm from. Love Saskatchewan. Lori is an intergenerational survivor of the Indian residential school system and a child from 60 Scoop generation. We're going to turn that music down. And Lori, would you like to join me on the stage? Lori Campbell! You're amazing. Lori, why do you march?
I march for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirits who aren't able to.
Thank you. Take it away, Lori.
I'm not sure if the fact that you said I've been here for 2 years and it feels like forever is a good thing or a bad thing, but I will take it as a good thing. So, Tanse nitotamak. Nanasko mamawi atamawao, mitanimi wasinko takisigao, ewapatamak. Nia Lori Campbell, I'm a Two-Spirit Nehio, Pitikosasana Squayo. Nikawi, Muniawi, Sagahikinik, Treaty 6 territory in Kiwitinoka, Saskatchewan. Ochio. So hello and welcome, my friends. I thank the Creator because it's so beautiful that we get to see another day. Some don't. My name is Lori Campbell. I'm a Two-Spirit Cree Métis woman from, my mother's from Montreal Lake Cree First Nation in Treaty 6 territory in northern Saskatchewan. And I'm very happy to be here with you all today and to be at the second Women's March KW. Thank you for having me. I thank Melissa for starting us off in a good way as we headed out on our march and acknowledging whose traditional territory we have the privilege of gathering on today. It is important to follow the protocol of acknowledging place. Acknowledging territory shows recognition of and respect for Indigenous peoples. It is a recognition of our being both in the past and in the present. And today, I would particularly like to show respect and recognition for the original women of this territory who nurtured and cared for the land and the water so that it would be here for us, mindful of every action they made so that 7 generations ahead of each and every generation, the land would still be here to nurture us. I would like to share with you stories of a small few Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people that have touched my life. But let me begin by telling you that I am an intergenerational survivor of the residential school system and a child from the 60 Scoop generation. I have spent my entire adult life searching for my mother and the members of my family. I discovered that I am the oldest of 8 siblings, 7 of us which are still alive. We were all forcibly removed from my mother and relocated individually with non-Indigenous families that divided us across 4 provinces. In all instances, our last names were changed, and in several instances, our first names were also changed. My story is not an isolated incident. An estimated 20,000 plus Indigenous children were affected by the scoop, which, although dubbed the 60 scoop, actually includes the time span from 1951 to 1991. Many of the children were moved clear across the country, and several even across seas. We were not afforded the right to be raised in our cultures and languages because of the ill-advised policies of past governments that stole that opportunity from us. And the legacy of the policies of past governments continues to perpetuate genocidal acts against Indigenous peoples. You may find yourself feeling empathetic as I share some of these stories, but I do caution about getting caught up in this emotion. Yes, it is an important attribute to have. It is important to be able to understand and share the feelings of another. However, I ask, do not hold your focus on being empathetic. In being too caught up in feelings of empathy, we can find ourselves making the suffering in others, in fact, about us. It could position the non-Indigenous person to ultimately be focused on how the suffering of Indigenous peoples becomes a suffering of the present-day non-Indigenous experience, ultimately erasing the experience of Indigenous peoples from the landscape altogether. I feel it is important to remember these events because they affect the lives of so many people, so many women today. All those mothers who had their children taken from them because the government decided they would be better off apart. For myself, the search for my mother and her children was an educational as well as a personal experience. I have learned firsthand the far-reaching effects of the residential school legacy. My life experiences have contributed not only to my understanding of Indigenous issues and my passion for education, but to a greater appreciation of who I am. And so I am here for these reasons today. When folks say that we should just focus on our similarities and that what we have in common, we can respond as Indigenous peoples. If our differences were equal, then we could look at what we have in common, but our differences are not equal. You know, we have an epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people in this country. We have an ongoing inquiry into the missing and murdered women, girls, and Two-Spirits. And yet we still live in a Canada that continues to pathologize Indigenous women, put them under the microscope, and ask them to tell their stories over and over again, rather than investigate the systems that allow such atrocities to happen. I am talking about systems such as the RCMP and community police, the courts, the schools, the hospitals, and the many more that continue to promote and uphold the endemic racism that decides an Indigenous woman's life is worth less. By pathologizing, I mean describing Indigenous women as psychologically abnormal or unhealthy and therefore unable to take care of themselves. But these women have proven time and time again with the obstacles they overcome and yet continue to face that they are strong and they are resilient. Violence affects Indigenous women and girls in their own families and communities, as well as in predominantly non-Indigenous communities, and it threatens women and girls from all walks of life. Violence against Indigenous women is at a pandemic level. Our homicide rate is roughly 4.5 times higher than that of mainstream women in Canada. The Native Women's Association of Canada estimates that over 3,000 Indigenous women and girls have gone missing or been murdered. I guess I should consider myself one of the lucky ones. In the 1950s, a 13-year-old girl was raped on her granny's bed by a member of the RCMP. She tried to tell the world, but her granny silenced her because she understood the world that Indigenous peoples had to live in. 20 years later, now a grown woman, she tries again to tell the whole world. Again, she was silenced, this time by the publisher of her book, a memoir entitled Half-Breed. I am, of course, talking about Maria Campbell. Somewhere between the story of a magnificent stallion named King and before the discovery that Granny was ill with cancer, 3 crucial paragraphs were removed by the editors just before final publication at Campbell's explicit opposition. When she asked for the pages back, she was told they had been destroyed. But this past spring, the pages were discovered at the McClelland and Stewart Archives at McMaster University. Today, I share an excerpt from the excised story. I let them in and said that everyone else was at the store. Suddenly, he put his arm around me and said that I was too pretty to go to jail. When I tried to get away, he grabbed my hair and he pulled me to him. I was frightened and was fighting back as my younger brother came running into the room. He tried to hit the Mountie, but was knocked to the floor. I was nearly to the door when the other came in. All I can recall is being dragged to Granny's bed, where the man tore my shirt and jeans. When I came to, Granny was crying and washing me off. I must have been in a state of shock because I heard everything she said, but I could not speak or cry despite the pain. My face was all bruised and I had teeth marks all over my chest and stomach. My head felt as if my hair had been pulled out by the roots. Granny was afraid that Dad would come home, so she helped me upstairs and put me to bed. She told me not to tell Daddy what had happened, that if he knew, he would kill those Mounties for sure and be hanged, and we would all have to be placed in an orphanage. She said that no one ever believed half-breeds in court. They would say that I had been fooling around with some boys and tried to blame the Mounties instead. When Daddy came home, she told him that King had gone crazy and thrown me. Dad sold King because he was afraid that I might be crippled or even killed next time. I don't know what Granny told my brother. After that, he always hated the police. When he grew up, he was in trouble all the time and served prison terms for assaulting police officers. My fear was so great that I even believed they would come back and beat me to make sure that I told no one. For weeks afterwards, if I heard a car coming into the yard, I would be sick to my stomach with fear. This story and this excerpt from Maria Campbell's memoir may be new to the world. This is not new to our family. She is my auntie, and we have always known this story within our family and within Indigenous communities. There are many, many more stories like this. What I'd like to do now is to share a prayer song for the Cookums, the grandmothers, and for their resistance, strength, and unwavering love. And I have some folks from the Waterloo Indigenous Student Center, and if there are any other Indigenous singers or drummers in the crowd here with us today and would like to come up and join us, I invite you to do so. We'll be doing a series of songs. I ask, if we will not stand up for the cookums and the grandmothers, then who will? After years of searching, I found my birth mother when I was 27 years old. It was a mixed blessing. I love her for who she is, and I understand how it is she came to be in the position she was in, and how I came to be in the position that I was in. She said to me, "I was so afraid to try to find you because I thought you would be mad that I made you an Indian." That broke my heart. My mother, Brenda, first started working the streets when she was 13 years old. She told me, "I remember my first trick. He drove a blue Toyota. His name was John, of course." I asked if she was scared that first time. "No," she replied, because I had started sniffing then. So I was sniffing. A lot of the girls that work the streets, they have to be drunk or stoned or whatever before they can. And that's the way I was, I guess. You know, I had to be stoned. It doesn't make you think about it too much, about what you're doing. When probed a little deeper into why my mom started working in the streets, she told me that since she had been raped at 9 years old, and again at 11, not to mention the numerous other sexual abuse incidences in between, all by non-biologically related people, some of whom were strangers. She had decided by 13 that if this was what men were about, then they could pay for it. Her story is not so different from many other Indigenous women. We'll share a prayer song to honor the survival and undeniable strength of Indigenous women. Again, I ask, if we will not stand up for our mothers, aunties, and sisters, then who will? I remember someone else whose life touched mine, a young two-spirit who hung out at the inner city youth center I worked at in the early 90s. They went by the name Alvis. They were a beautiful and gentle soul. They were kind and good-natured and got along well with the other youth. As a youth care worker and a two-spirit myself, I had formed a unique bond with Elvis. The next thing I knew, they were stabbed to death and left in the street to die. We share a prayer song to acknowledge our missing and murdered two-spirit friends and family. And yet again, I will ask, if you will not stand up for the two spirits, then who will? In 2004, I was working for the Regina Police Service as the Indigenous Victims Services Liaison. On July 5th of that year, 5-year-old Tamara Jewel Keepness disappeared from her residence. Tamara and her 5 siblings, one of whom was her twin sister, were watching TV and enjoying a snack on the evening of her disappearance. She was last seen heading to bed at 11 p.m. When she didn't come down the stairs for breakfast the next morning, the family frantically searched for Tamara and within the hour had phoned the police. I attended to the house with police officers, while hundreds of police officers and volunteers scoured the neighborhood for Tamara, including dumpsters and the outbuildings. To this day, Tamara is still missing. We will share a prayer song, a children's lullaby for all of the missing and murdered children. And I ask you, if you will not stand up for the children, then who will? In our culture, we make decisions based on the 7 generations thinking. We know that we stand before you with the undeniable strength, love, and wisdom of our ancestors 7 generations back. 7 generations ago, our ancestors were preparing for each and every one of us. Today, we are preparing for 7 generations into the future. We are preparing for the children yet to come. Will you? We all want to believe that it will not happen to us or will not happen to us again. What I suggest is that we all take a moment, be honest with ourselves, and think about or reflect upon the ways in which we are complacent to incidences of sexual harassment, maybe even assault, that occur around us. I am not implying that we are complicit. I am saying that sometimes we are consciously complacent about what goes on around us, perhaps sometimes in an effort to protect ourselves or to keep ourselves safe. Ask yourself, in what ways am I allowing otherness to perpetuate incidences of sexual harassment or assault? I do not say this to judge. I do not say this because I think that I am immune to being a part of othering. I am saying that we must think about the ways in which we can collectively rise and support each other collectively. It is not enough to simply come out and listen to personal stories of Indigenous survival and strength, acknowledging missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirits, but not doing anything or perhaps even continuing to perpetuate harm is not acceptable. I expect non-Indigenous women to come out and support Indigenous women. We do not want non-Indigenous women speaking for us or making decisions about our best interests, but we want them to support our sovereignty. And if we are expecting that, it begs the question to ourselves, how are we engaging in supporting non-Indigenous women, immigrant women, Muslim women, trans women, and others? Are we showing up? In the same ways, we don't expect all non-Indigenous folks to understand Indigenous issues in the same way that we understand and experience them. We don't need to intimately understand the issues everyone else faces, but we do need to show up, support the rise, the sovereignty, and take action. That is how I can support. How will you support?
Hello, Waterloo Region. How are we doing? Amazing. So there's just a little bit of housekeeping I wanted to let you know about. There are some amazing booths that are kind of surrounding us with amazing organizations, and I'll tell you a little bit about them as we move along. I want to give a big round of applause to Lori and to her crew. Lori, you're amazing. Thank you. Incredible. As you saw, this is my sign. Thank you. For women. And so it's appropriate right now for me to shout out a couple politicians that took time out of their day today to march with us and march for human rights and women's rights. And so maybe if you want to come up to the front, that would be amazing. I saw Raj Sanji here. See, he's still here. I saw Marwan Tabara. Yep. Come on up. I saw Catherine Fife, one of my girls. Laura May Lindo, you're going to be on this stage in a little bit, but let's get you up front. Cambridge Mayor Catherine McGarry, your worship. There she is. We did have Mayor Jaworski with us. He stopped at the Kitchener border, but we won't say anything about that. But it was great to see him out. We also have a couple councillors here. Tennille Bornegar, Debbie Chapman, Margaret Johnson. Did I miss any politicians? Come on up. Yes, Kassimi Show. I love saying it in French. All right, can we give these people a round of applause? Because we need them on our side. Hey, Barry, you came. Amazing. I got a Facebook message. You couldn't come. Your worship, Barry Verbanovic. Thank you very much. We got some snaps. Amazing. Okay, let's get back to business here. There's also some pretty amazing people I want to thank here who helped organize this. So I'm going to shout out all the people, and I'd like to just say, first of all, that it was an entirely female team of women that organized this event today. Thank you. So Cassie, Hillary, Cole, Casey, Alex, Riley, Sarah, Carolina, put up your hands. We want to thank the City of Kitchener, the City of Waterloo, and Waterloo Region Police Force for helping us out here today. We marched on the street. And while we're all really quickly stripping off all of our clothes, because I don't know about you, I'm getting pretty hot. It's like 4 pairs of pants. I also want to thank all the amazing people that had vests on today who kept us safe on the road, and they were all volunteers too. So if you see the vests around, please thank them. Now, Lori kicked us off, and we've got 7 more incredible female leaders that are going to be speaking here today. And let's bring up our first female speaker, shall we? She's a woman on the move. Her name is Lindsay Butcher. She's an outspoken advocate for women's rights and reproductive justice. Lindsay! Let's give her a round of applause. She serves as the ED of the Shore Center, which is a Kitchener-based charity providing inclusive health education and pregnancy options and support. We love the Shore Center, and we love Lindsay. Come on up, Lindsay.
Thank you. That's quite the introduction.
I know, Lindsay, I always like to say to people, why do you march?
I'm marching to save sex ed. It is just so inspiring to see so many of you out here this morning to stand up and speak out for women's rights. Every year, Shore Center provides inclusive sexual health education to more than 10,000 students across Waterloo Region. We also provide compassionate, pro-choice support for women and trans people facing an unplanned pregnancy. This year, our work has come under direct attack by the provincial government. One of their first steps after the election was to scrap the sex ed curriculum and replace it with content, outdated content from 20 years ago. For many students, sex ed is the only accurate and safe source they have for information about their bodies, their sexuality, consent, and healthy relationships. The repeal of the curriculum was a direct attack on LGBTQ+ students, and in particular, trans students. This outdated curriculum completely erases their experience and tries to push them back into the closet. In the coming months, the Ministry of Education is expected to release a new sex ed curriculum. We only have a short window of time to make our voices heard and influence the development of this new content. We need to make it clear to them that Waterloo Region will not accept anything less than accurate, inclusive, evidence-based sex ed for our children. Please make your voice heard and contact your MPP, write letters to the editor, speak out at school board meetings, and join us in standing up for sex ed. Thank you.
Amazing. Lindsay! Lindsay also has a booth along the back, so please go check it out. Now, we're all here for our own reasons, but collectively we can make change for the world in our community and around the world. We are good. I was going to tap dance for you, but I don't have to anymore because we have an amazing woman that's coming up. Her name is Angela. So we're going to welcome to the stage Angela Onara. Now, she's an inspirational storyteller. She's a creative broadcaster and media professional. As a member of the Zonta Film Festival, I can tell you that films are not being told by women, only 6%. So it's amazing to have an incredible female storyteller in our midst. And she's a glass ceiling breaker. So let's have Angela come on up to the stage. Angela? Here she is, wearing a red scarf. Yeah. Angela, why do you march?
I march to change the narrative of women in media, the representation of violence against women in media. That's why I march.
Yeah, you did.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. I have to apologize for being late. I have 3 kids. 2 go to Chinese school. 1 goes to therapy in St. Agatha, so it's been a heck of a morning. So, but I'm so happy to be here. It's a privilege to be here, honestly, to speak to so many of you, speak with you, stand with you, and speak with you. So I'm a filmmaker here, like she said, based in Kitchener. I'm from Nigeria originally, and so being that I'm from Nigeria, you know that violence against women is something we live with every day in Nigeria. I have personally witnessed violence against my own mother by my father for many years, so this is a very personal thing for me. These stories we hear every day. We all know women who have been abused, who are currently being abused, and women who are going into abusive relationships and we can't do anything to stop them. So when we think about rape or domestic violence, what do we imagine? What image comes to mind? We think of women That's the only thing that comes to mind. A woman who is battered, who's bruised, who's beaten, who's been raped. But the media, in its report of violence against women, consistently keeps the focus on the women, on the circumstances, on the effects of the rape or domestic violence. And what about focus on the people who perpetrated? Men. It is not violence against women. It's violence against women by men. And that's what we need to change in the media. Now I'm going to read some facts that we all know, we've all heard before. Rape is the most underreported crime. And why is that? 1 in 4 women experience sexual and or physical violence by an intimate partner. See? Intimate partner. By a man in her life. A man that she trusts, a man that she lives with, a man that she loves. So when you say intimate partner, we make it seem like it's an alien or doesn't exist. It's some fictional character. It's a man, a living, breathing man who should protect her, who is abusing her. This is my personal story, watching my father do this. He wouldn't beat me, but he would beat my mom, you know? So if it's not okay for him to beat his own child, why beat someone else's child? And so as a professional in media, I would like to change that narrative. But we must all demand it. When we complain about a newsreader's hairstyle or too much makeup or her maybe tone-deaf comments, we also have to demand these changes in the media. Let them represent violence against women appropriately. We have to begin to demand it. You cannot just say violence against women. It's violence against women by men. The everyday man on the street who catcalls her, who calls her names just because she won't give him her number or won't give him her time. It's our time, it's our bodies. We can do whatever we want with it. So when we challenge these narratives, we change the way people see it. Because the media is such a strong and powerful tool. It gets people to think, it gets them to change their minds, it gets them speaking, it gets them to move and to act. So when we demand these things, we're asking them, change the way men see violence against women. Change the way women see violence against women. Enough of the shame blaming. They may not say it's shame blaming, but when you focus only on the woman, you are shame blaming. You're putting her in focus. But when you put the focus on the man who has been raping and beating and killing and doing whatever he wants to the woman in his life, we begin to change that narrative. So thank you so much, Kitchener, for having me. It's been fun being here. I love all your beautiful faces. And let's continue to march.
Now, Angela is working on a film right now called Operation Lights Out, the story of Con Air Relief, and we can't wait to see that. So I'm just going to shout out another booth. One of the other booths is called the Zonta booth, which is an international organization. I belong to Zonta. I know there's some Zontans here. Where are they? Woo! It's been around for about 20 years, and I mentioned the Zonta Film Festival before. They also do an International Women's Day dinner, as well as a female golf tournament called the Betty Thompson Golf Classic. So I don't know about you, but one of my favorite signs at these protests is always the one that says, "I can't believe we're still protesting this shit." Sorry, isht. Right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Now our next speaker could be holding that sign. Kate is a mother and a grandmother and president of Spectrum and Trans and Proud. She was physically and sexually assaulted, but she attended her first public protest in the early 1990s. She's with us today. Please give a warm welcome to Kate. Kate, why do you march?
Specifically today, I'm marching for trans women. And I'm going to go to this mic because it's a bit taller. Specifically, I want to talk about one trans woman today, a woman named Dana Martin. Now, why Dana Martin is important is because she was the first trans woman killed this year. She won't be the last. The US loses 25 to 30 every year that we know about. And the reason we don't know about them is because after they die, the police misgender them and report them with their legal names, and their government names, instead of their true names. So this happened again to Dana Martin. She was driving along a road in Montgomery, Alabama, where she lived, and someone shot her, and she drove into a ditch and died there. And when they did report on it, they reported that a man had died, and they used her dead name. They disappeared her. They ignored the fact that this is another case of violence against women. Now, I've experienced this myself, all right? I came out in this town 26 years ago. It was different then. It was tougher. Some of you will notice I don't have a lot of teeth. That's violence. That's violence against women in this town. I've been beaten up 4 times in this town for being trans. I got curb stomped by a guy literally wearing a Nazi shirt. All right? In this town. Be aware this happens here. All right? This happens to trans women that you know, trans women you don't know. We suffer violence. We have among the highest rates of murdered women, right up there with Indigenous women, unfortunately. And we get the extra violence that we are misgendered and dead named after we're dead. All right? I know a young woman, I knew a young woman, a Muslim woman from Toronto. She was 21 years old. She took her own life back in October. A friend of mine. And she was misgendered and dead named and buried in a suit. She disappeared. She's just disappeared from the world. Her name is gone, her body is gone, her clothes are gone. Everything about her is just gone. So this is the extra layer of violence that we face when we are attacked, when we are killed, is that we disappear. So please don't let us disappear. When you hear about a trans woman dying, say her name. Dana Martin, say her name. Dana Martin. Say her name. Dana Martin. Damn right. And I will add one last thing, that everything I've said is 10 times worse for trans women of color. All right? Dana Martin was a trans woman of color, as most of the murdered people are. This is an absolute brutal extermination that's going on, and we don't know how many there are because they disappear when they get killed. They get misgendered, misnamed, and we don't even know it happened. So help us not disappear. Be good to the trans people in your life. And remember that trans rights are human rights.
It's so important that we share our stories in this setting here today, and I want to thank you for sharing your story, Kate. And I also want to point out another amazing organization that has a booth here today called Feminine Harbor, and they are all about sharing amazing stories. Is Carolina here? Yeah, she's at her booth. So they have something called the Light Stories that amplify women's voices. And today they have a call to action for all of you, and that's to encourage students to demand that university professors and departments review their syllabus and make sure it includes female, diverse thinkers, philosophers, and writers. All right, I'm really excited to welcome our next speaker here today. She's one of our outstanding sisters in the community. It's Fazia Mehar, and she's the founding member and chair of the Coalition of Muslim Women of KW. It's an incredible organization that's addressing racism, discrimination, and Islamophobia through advocacy and activism. Fazia, why do you march?
I march in solidarity with my sisters and brother who are marching here and also marching globally today for women's rights and human rights. But I also march to make sure that my story and the stories of people like me are also part of the conversation when we march together in solidarity. Okay, so I actually didn't expect this, but I want to start by saying that in this crowd, if there are women, actually I should take if back. the women who identify as Muslim women, if you don't mind, and if you would like to share the stage with me, you all may not be able to come here, Muslim women and men who are here, allies, please, if you would like, come to the front. This is the time for people to see what are the rights that you are here to march for. Please come to the front if you like. And if we have any Muslim men in the crowd, we want you to be here. So I want to share, thank you, and please stay with me. It's really, really important that we know that as women, as people, as human, we all march together today in solidarity with each other, but the issues that may be foremost for us may not be exactly the same that we are marching for today. I want to share a little bit of very quick story with you. I came to this country about 18 years ago, so I'm talking about 2001. It's my first year in Canada and my first job in Canada. In the lunchroom, a coworker, after a couple of weeks in the job, told me jokingly, and I laughed with him, and he said that when we heard about you, we thought about you entering the lunchroom with 2 Kalashnikovs in your hands, and boom, 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 here we are. And I laughed with him. In the same lunchroom, not too long after that, while we were sharing some of our old pictures in a very good mood, and I had a wedding picture of mine to share with the people in the lunchroom, there was another man who told me how submissive I looked with my eyes lowered in my picture, and that picture that I was so proud of. And it was the same time in 2001 when the drums of war were beating louder and louder, especially in North America. And if you all remember, the biggest moral justification for that war came from this idea that we are going there to liberate oppressed Muslim women at that time of Afghanistan. So this categorization of Muslim women, on one hand, they're perceived as submissive and oppressed, in need of saving, even if it's through war or through violence, and at the same time as a security threat, means quite a hostile environment that women like me live every day in North America. And please, when I say North America, not for a second think that it's out there. It doesn't happen here. We already heard from Kate about the violence against trans women right here in the region of Waterloo, in the community that we all love very much. So hate crime against Canadian Muslims are on rise, and we all are. I am hoping that everybody in this crowd really know that in 2017, hate crime against Canadian Muslims rose 150%, 151% to be exact, 207% in Ontario. And who bears the brunt of these hate crimes? Women. You're so right. And that takes me to this idea of gendered Islamophobia. And Islamophobia, whether we like the term or not, is a term that's now being used to describe or to label the hate against Muslims and also the faith that they practice. Gendered Islamophobia is very interesting. Do you know that in general, hate crimes, the perpetrators are men? and victims are men. Well, when it comes to Islamophobic attacks, men are still the perpetrators, but victims are overwhelmingly women. And why is that? We just heard how Muslim women, women like me, are seen at the same time submissive, oppressed, and a security threat. That makes us the perfect target of a hate crime. And it happens here in the region of Waterloo. A lot of these hate crimes are not reported. I want to make sure that when we march today, we also remember those women who have been facing these hate-based crimes and sometimes just incidents based on who they are, what their gender, their visible minority status, their skin color, and their faith. Everything together means they are at a very big threat of receiving violence. So intersectionality that I talk about, it means layers of violence. Interpersonal, systemic, societal. A man can beat me at home and force me to wear a piece of clothing that I might not want to wear. And I go out and another man can decide that I shouldn't be wearing that piece of clothing. And that man can push me, shove me, beat me, whatever he wants. Another man or a group of men can decide that I must wear a certain kind of clothing to get my full citizen's right. Another group of men can decide that I shouldn't be wearing certain piece of clothing to get my human rights and my citizen's right. So you can imagine the layers of violence that's facing Muslim women now in our times. So I want to say that no church, no state. Do you want to chant with me? No church, no state. Women must control the fate. So I want to almost finish what I wanted to share today by saying that in today's time, few groups are as demonized as Muslims, and women worldwide are always oppressed. And this is, I'm saying this with a broken heart. It's only a part of the women's story that we are saying when we say that they're oppressed. And they're oppressed on based of their gender. But given the current times, Muslim women are suffering the double-edged sword of misogyny and Islamophobia. And misogyny and Islamophobia, when they come together, they're toxic. They're more toxic than ever you can think about them. So today we need a feminist movement. Today we need to march together. And we need a feminist movement that recognizes, celebrates, and defends the intersections of race, class, gender identity, sexuality, and religion. Muslim women march here, locally, globally. The issues that are on their mind may or may not be the same that every one of us in the room are marching for, as you can see, and please connect with these women later on to see what is making them march today. And I want to finish by using a quote that has been used so many times that it sounds like a cliche, but at the same time, I can't find anything else that can best describe my feeling at this time. If you have come to help me today or any other time, here or in the world anywhere, you're wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound with mine, then let us walk together. So brothers and sisters, if your liberation is bound with my liberation, let us all march together.
Fazia, everyone.
Now there is another booth if you want to learn more about her organization. There's another booth somewhere in the back, I think. Over here, I think, is where the Muslim Women Association's booth is. Is it over here, Fazia? Your booth? It's over here. Oh, over here. Okay, there you go. I want to point everyone in the right direction. Please reach out and connect. That's what we're here for. Are you ready to do a little chant with me? Because I think it'll bring the next speaker up. So we're going to say, our bodies are rights. Are you ready? Our bodies are rights. Our bodies are rights. Now, Sarah Castleman is the ED of the Sexual Assault Support Center. She's been on the front lines of the Me Too movement in our community. So we got to give her a big round of applause. The work she does in our community is incredible. And so I want to ask you, Sarah, why do you march?
I march because no woman who's experienced sexual violence should have to wait a year for counseling.
That's right.
Wow. So as Melissa just said, in 2017 when Me Too hit, the Sexual Assault Support Center, or SASC as we're known, was flooded for calls for support like no other time in our history. Me Too had an incredible impact, but it didn't happen in a vacuum. Dialogue about sexual violence has been slowly increasing, quickly increasing, over the last 4 years. As has the demand for our services, the increase has gone up. So 4 years ago, the Ghomeshi story broke. Following that, we saw the allegations against Cosby resurface and multiply just as he performed in our community. Shortly thereafter, there was a report that talked about a culture of sexual violence in the Canadian Armed Forces. Similar stories made headlines about the RCMP. Next, there was the storm about sexual violence on our university and college campuses. Then the Globe and Mail released a scathing investigative series on police responses to sexual violence across Canada. It's at this point that Weinstein was exposed and the Me Too movement took center stage. So with each development, our center was called to respond, and we did. Sometimes our response included issuing a public statement and speaking to every media outlet in the community. Sometimes our response looked like meticulously reviewing university policies and providing feedback. Sometimes our response resulted in the development of a community task force and a review of sexual assault police investigations. And sometimes our response was very quiet, behind closed doors, one-on-one with survivors. With each development, more women reached out. This is what it means to be a community-based sexual assault support center. This is what makes us unique and so critical to our community. We advocate for survivors at the individual level and the systemic level, and we show up when our community and survivors need us. Sexual assault centers and women's shelters exist because of the women's movement, specifically the second wave in the 60s and 70s. In 1989, after the second wave had subsided, we were one of the last urban centers in Ontario without critical sexual violence services. Seeing this, a small group of local women took action and launched our 24-hour support line. And so we began. 30 years have now passed. Just yesterday, some of you might have seen, we launched a refresh of our center's logo for this milestone anniversary. It includes the tagline, "Nevertheless, we persist." 30 years of resiliency, healing, and hope. Isn't that awesome? Nevertheless, we persist. As you likely know, "Nevertheless, she persisted" was an expression adopted by the feminist movement in 2017. It became popular after the US Senate voted to silence Senator Elizabeth Warren's objections to the confirmation of Senator Jeff Sessions as US Attorney General. Specifically, she was challenging his history and his civil rights record. This expression's meaning has now expanded to refer to women's persistence in breaking barriers despite being silenced or ignored. We adopted this expression to mark our 30th anniversary for 3 reasons. First, it speaks to our center's continuing efforts to shift the attitudes at the heart of sexual violence,
despite often meeting resistance. Second, it reflects the struggle, persistence, and resilience of the many survivors we've walked beside for 30 years. And third, because it ties us to our roots, the feminist movement. Like those women who came before us and established sexual assault centers and women's shelters, we're living in a time of social change. For me, clear evidence of this shift can be found in our center's waiting lists. Just a few years ago, we had 40 survivors on our waiting list, and we really struggled that this meant that women were waiting 3 months for support when they reached out. Our waiting list has now climbed to 176 survivors. It is a cultural shift that more survivors are reaching out for support than ever before. Women are finding the courage to stand up and speak out about their experiences. That said, we don't have the resources to meet this incredible demand. And the fact that there is such a demand means we have so much more work to do. So we're not done. I'm asking you, don't let the momentum die down. We need to stand united, talking to our workplaces, our families, our social circles, our political leaders. We need to take our outrage, our passion, and our priorities to the polls at every level of government. Let's use our platforms to amplify the voices of our intersectional feminist movement, the voices of survivors, Indigenous women, racialized women, sex workers, women with disabilities, immigrant and refugee women, trans and non-binary folks, the rainbow community. And if you're able, stand in solidarity by actually supporting these agencies, the ones at the mic today doing this work. Make a financial contribution, become a monthly donor. Our sector really needs support right now. So to end, I'll simply say, and please join in with me, she was warned, she was given an explanation, nevertheless, thank you.
Sarah Castleman and Sask, and their booths right back here. Check it out. So one of the things that I wrote a couple weeks ago and I wanted to share with you is I march because until we have equal rights, we will not have equal representation. And I have hope because women like MPP Laura May Lindo and Catherine Fife are representing us. Now, that's right. It ain't easy, I'm sure. Thank God it's you, not me. Now, Laura was elected last year, and she is a powerhouse. There's no other word to describe you, sister. An activist, an educator. This is what a feminist looks like, so come on up. Laura, yeah. I should call you MPP May Lindo, but okay. Why do you march?
I march because I am a woman of privilege, and I commit to all of you today, as I have done in the past, to use my position of privilege to center the voices of Indigenous, racialized, Black, you've got to say Black, my friends, and queer women in all of the spaces that I inhabit, and most importantly, that means the political space. So here we go.
Let's march.
Let's march. I don't know what just happened there. I was like setting up to sing a little thing. Did you see that? That was really weird. I am overwhelmed, actually, by everything that I've heard before coming up on this stage, but there's really two things that I want to say. One is this. Yesterday, I hosted like a bangin' sign-making party. Yes, I did. And there was a little person that was there, and their sign said, "Trust women. Trust women." And I thought to myself, yeah, trust women. But you know what that means for us? What it means for us, and with my commitment to you, is that we have to trust women when an Indigenous woman says that we need to go out and protect the land and the water. We need to trust women. That means when Indigenous elders tell us that the label allies is not something that we can just decide that we are, but we have to actually be gifted with that because we've done the work. That means we trust women. When a woman of color tells you that being a feminist, being a woman, cannot be separated from their experiences of racism, that means you have to trust women. So I'm going to pretty much guarantee that at some point, some of you, hopefully all of you in this space, are going to receive an email from me, a request from me, to stand with me to fight against the overrepresentation of racialized Indigenous folks in prisons. And if you trust women, you're going to come out and help me to do some work. So do you trust women? Do you really, really trust women? Now we're talking. And I ask for that because I have to share a story. A young woman of color came to me, told me that they were sexually abused. And in discussing next steps, disclosed to me that the person that abused her was a black male. And because he was a black male, she didn't want to go to the police because then she would be adding to the overrepresentation of black men in the prison system. I need us to sit with that for just a second, because sometimes, because we're in positions of privilege, we don't realize that the fight to address our criminal justice system is a fight to make sure that there's no more violence against women. It is a fight that will allow women of color, Indigenous women, to actually name their abuser, because they know that they won't be throwing their own people into a system of harm. So do you trust women? Do you really, really trust women? Okay, I'm looking in the crowd and I don't see her here, but she totally showed up at my sign-making party, Alicia Brilla. And Alicia Brilla has the most beautiful song. Actually, my little people, 2 of my little people were in her video. What? It's called No More Violence. I'm not gonna sing all of it, but I am gonna sing part of it because then you're gonna help me, right? Have you heard that song? Yeah. So like the chorus, no more violence, no more. You can do that. No more violence, no more. And then the best part of the song is when she says, because she's got such a beautiful voice, because she has such a beautiful heart, because she's such an amazing woman, because she uses her position of privilege to fight back. She says, if when I say no more, you say violence, no more. When I say more, you say love. More. That's what we need to do, is put more love into this little universe of ours. So I'm going to do it when I go to Queen's Park. Catherine Fife does it with me every day. We sit together. We cry together. But we also fight together. And I can't wait to keep fighting with all of you. Thank you.
I wanted you to keep singing, Laura. You're amazing. Awesome. All right, we've got one last speaker on our stage today, so I want to thank all of you. I don't know about you, but I think I can't even count. I think I have 4 pairs of pants on under here, and so my feet are sweating, my pants are falling down, but we did it, and we're about to finish. But we have one more speaker, and she's really special. Her name is Medea, and she's from the Feminist Youth Collective at the YWCA in Cambridge. And she is going to share with us a spoken word piece. So please give her all of your attention. Tima, come on out. But before you begin, I want to ask you, why do you march?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
Oh.
Today, I march for all the young women in our group, in our society, in our community. Because some of these girls don't have role models, don't have women in their lives that can teach them a better life, teach them that they're stronger than what they're taught. So I fight for them. So, as you guys know, I'm part of this Feminist Youth Collective in Cambridge. And this group is made up of a bunch of little girls. We have small voices, but we're learning to have bigger voices and make a bigger impact in our community. A mother to a son. I will be a mother to a son. A mother whose arms swaddle a boy destined for greatness, destined a hero. I will hold his hands to the first day of kindergarten, wipe his tears from his falls, pick him up for his victories, kiss his sadness and nurture his happiness. I will raise him a warrior. To be wise like a king, but humble like a foot soldier, his eyes glitter with mischief and a dimple for a laughter, my knight will protect me. But as much as I will raise him to lead a tango on this two-way road this world gives, I'll never know what to do when he uses his armor as a way to hide, then feign the world. Or the sword I gave him to slaying his enemies, when he uses it to cut the fleshy part in the back of his knees. So I won't be able to see, but Mama always knows, or I should know. But I don't know how to deal with his heart slowly chipping away. His tears that burn through his confidence in childhood, less heart to give now, as he throws it away to give space for his sadness. A one he buries so deep inside. To talk of it is a crime. As life gave him boulders, he put them on his back. Too much pain to bear, he put his emotions under lock and key. Because to feel is not good enough. To cry is not a thing. To love anyone besides yourself can break you. He numbed. I remember having to stay awake for his midnight battles, the fight he gave away against the sway of his crib. As I tried rocking him back to sleep, he cried, awake and alive when the whole world was asleep, like how the ocean waves keep crashing against the shore even though no one's watching. My baby's a fighter. But these moments that I try catching up on missed sleep, I close my eyes for seconds too long. Missing my stop on the bus, trying to run up to catch up, I lost my boy to a man who's just a ghost of a boy I once knew. The raging waves that hailed the moon got stuck between a man and a dam. And I'll be damned to admit that the lively spirit of this kid broke, because his outlook became more important than his in-look. He traded intellects for good dick pics. His how are yous became a you up, let's smash. I taught my boy manners, but culture will be more of a parent than I could ever offer. It taught him his popularity, gifted him followers, materialism to feed into the mania of money. It taught him to put his head so high, too high he can't see the ground, can't see the one-way stairway downwards that he's walking on. I found out being a mother is designed to never have a chance. He came home one day and could not look me in the eye as he told me I never taught him anything real in life. But I'll still hold his hand when I walk him to court to face the crimes he has committed. He will sob and ask for forgiveness, exclaim his mother taught him better. He will never learn as he'll be let out with the warning. People will pity him and his diminishing chances at education. They will learn his name, but never the girl he assaulted, the victim and her diminishing chance to be able to live again, to walk, but just an empty skull, an empty skeleton, burying her emotions side by side with her dignity and shame. No funeral, no goodbye, but just empty, dark vultures flying over her. Her trauma makes me numb with fear that my son will become a mirror whose shards will shatter more than my heart, who will never ever see his reflection, never see his heart that he threw away so long ago. His body that looks like my son but just holds an empty shell that perpetuates this culture. I made his hands to be gentle. His voice was meant to carry the beautiful air. Who taught him to be a weapon? Who taught him that his femininity is something to be ashamed of? Who taught him to hide in his armor? In my man, in my son, I see a dead boy holding the edge of the sword, the very same I gave him, his mother. One day I'm going to be a mother. One day I'm going to be a mother to a son who is growing up in a society that failed him. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that your mom? So proud. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So there's nothing more powerful than a group of determined sisters marching alongside their partners and male allies to stand up for what we know is right. We joined 30 countries, over 600 marches around the world today, and close to 1 million people. So thank you for being a part of something really incredible. My name is Melissa Durrell, and I also work with Women's March Global, and at 3 a.m. we started with a live feed of all of the marches around the world in Nigeria, and I've literally been having an outer body experience. My skin is tingling because what we're doing in this world is so important, and it means people need to show up. And so thank all of you for showing up, and the hundreds that went home to peel off their clothes, I'm sure. So thank you very much. Thank you. So what do we do with this collective power? There's a petition that will be going out tomorrow led by Women's March Saskatoon, and it'll be on missing and murdered Indigenous women, and I hope that you will sign it and be a part of this important movement in this country starting tomorrow, okay? Well, it started a while ago, but we're going to sign a petition tomorrow. Okay, and I want to thank all of you for braving the cold and sharing this incredible space with all of us today. Thank you. And thank you to the volunteers. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to our speakers. Let's give them a big round of applause. They shared their souls, and we're all better for it. I want to shout out Heart Beats Hate. There are they over here. And So Far Sounds for their support in covering our March costs. You can check out heartbeatshate.com for upcoming initiatives and sofarsounds.com/Waterloo Region for upcoming concerts. Please bring your signs back home with you and stay in touch. You can find us at #Women'sWave. And I want to bring Cassie up on the stage. Cassie is our fearless ambassador for Women's March. Cassie. I told her I was going to do this, and what did she do? Go to the very back. Here she comes. Big round of applause for Cassie. So Cassie, I want to give you the last word. Why did you march today?
Hi, thank you for coming. I marched for my grandmothers, my aunts, and my sister, and all the Black women around the world.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next year. Anyone who would like to get their picture taken at the front, please come up. We'd like, and our speakers. Speakers, come up to the front. We're going to get your pictures taken, please.
Thank you both so much.
till they're done with their photos. Okay, sure. Is it done? So it's still going?